Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar conversation about AI in the courts. My name is Heather Pettit. I am the Vice President of Justice Solutions here at Mission Critical Partners. I have nearly 20 years working in the justice space and over 30 years working in technology. And so I am joined with my compadre. Well, I will allow him to give an introduction here shortly. David Friese. He is our AI expert in this space, so I'm excited to work with him on this. But we did want to give an overview of kind of what our discussion is going to be about today and let you know that it's going to be about a 30-minute discussion that will then allow for you to ask questions and us to provide some answers to those questions. Our topics are going to focus on really practical use cases for AI in the court space. We know that AI has been still a challenge to implement in the government public sector due to largely, robust governance structure. Quality of data really is the biggest issue, workforce readiness, and other case scenarios that may not be applicable in training and controlling. And so really understanding where we can apply AI and it can be beneficial to us is what we want to explore today. And this is just our very first segment in doing something of this nature. So I want to turn it over to my colleague, David. Do you want to give a little introduction about yourself?
Thank you, Heather. It's an honor to be here and to work with you. I'll first off start with saying that I'm not the court expert. That's Heather. She has knows everything courts, but I do have a strong technology background, formerly with NASA. I've worked with Microsoft and Intel, Boeing, many major companies. And I've been working in AI since 2017, even doing computer vision work many years ago on AI. It's changing very quickly, and I'm very excited about our subject today. Looking forward to doing our best to make it practical and moving forward with AI in the courts.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, as we know, AI is ever evolving. Every day, week, we're hearing something new. And I think the most fascinating topic, which is not necessarily court related, that I just got on my feed was that one of the first AI generated K-pop stars, Kion, just signed a $50 million record contract with Higgsfield Studios and record labels. Now, you have to say, wow, that's a lot of money being transitioned for technology providers, if you think about it from that context. So the regular people, the regular world, everybody who are using our systems, our court space, are now going to be inundated with everything related to AI. And it is, again, it's kind of been my mantra that we need to be prepared for this. We need to understand it. We need to have a really good understanding of the direction and how we can either at least understand it and utilize it, because there are benefits and values for the courts using AI in its operations and for the public to be able to get better access to justice. And so there's a couple things that we want to dive into. So the first, I kind of want to talk to David about, what are the different types of AI that are appropriate for government use? We know that some, like the, generated, the automatically, the learning AI may or may not be the right case. Creating an AI pop star is not necessarily the right version for the courts, but what is the right type of AI that we might want to be using for the court space?
First of all, I want to say this is really me, but I don't know how to prove it because it's really crazy when you talk about that AI generated music, because you really can't tell the difference, and it is so well produced. And that's one of the things, obviously, as we get into things with the courts that are of a big concern, is how do you tell what's real and what's not real? That's where I see all the headlines right now is it's not real. The lawyer presented case studies that are court cases that don't even exist. I mean, how do you even know all these things? Because it's changing so fast that we can have K-pop stars doing $50 million. It's like I think I'm going to compete with that, and I won't see you next week, Heather, because I'm going to be making my songs. It's just nuts. But in terms of where we're going with technology, and we don't have time to get into very much depth here, but there's different types of AI technology that can be used. I mean, there's digital twins, there's computer vision I mentioned earlier. There's things like that apply in AI. But AI is more than just generative AI. Most of us, over the last 2.5 years since ChatGPT came out, we think of AI as ChatGPT. It is working with language, and that is what's created the hype. AI has been around for decades, right? But just now the hype is AI is seemingly so smart with language. Generative AI has its great benefits, but it also is what's also generating most of the problems that we're facing, especially in the courts, because it is generative AI that is producing the songs, it's producing the language, it's giving us the hallucinations, and we can get more into that as we go through it. But there is hallucinations and bias with that. There's also something that's very helpful in the courts, and we're going to get into some examples of this, that is not new as well. It's called machine learning. And the way I think of machine learning, it's really kind of, statistical analysis on steroids. It is dealing with a lot of data, finding trends, finding patterns in data that you may not have been able to see before, just because it is, it's a machine. It can sit there all day long and figure out what the patterns are and come back with some good patterns for us. We were just dealing with one of the court things. I'll give you an early example, Heather, is, we were looking at how do we validate documents? Are they, we were looking at a use case here where we are helping a client with validating that their scanned documents are accurate, right? Or they can read them. And the use case was that it was going to take like 40 years for a person to go through and verify if this scan is good, because there's 100 million documents, and it's a big deal. But with AI, we can do that in a matter of a couple months, right? We can go through and we can train the AI through machine learning to get better and better and better at predicting, which pages are good, which pages are bad. Very simple use case. More complicated than that, but I'll pause there, Heather, and let you go on.
Yeah, I think that, when we're looking at this, the differentiation of what types of AI are the practical approach in the court space are what's critical. So if you are looking to explore using AI, I don't think that you want to dive in with generative AI right off the bat. That is a great concept if you're trying to do research, but there is a ability to validate, and the human must always be kept in the loop. So one of the areas that I recommend looking at, and that we've seen across our clients, as well as successful use cases that are happening throughout the United States right now, is using machine learning. Machine learning has something that we have been using for many, many years now across the board. And what the benefit of machine learning is that you are using your existing resources and having them validate the work, but it is something that would take them hundreds and hundreds of man hours to do this type of validation, that they are able to use technology to validate it. The other thing that I think that you brought up, David, which is really interesting, and I think is really a differentiator as well, is that bias that's included in the existing data. Generative is taking all the data that's in there and the construct of the language being used, the people's voice, the context of the material, right? Where in machine learning, you are taking your data and you can cleanse out many of those biases right off the bat. So, gender, you can cleanse out the racial, the distinction. You can, all of those things, socioeconomic status. These are things that if you're looking at it for evaluating your data, you want to look at research, you want to look at court performance. You can look at it from the perspective of purely decision making and remove all of those other elements and allow AI to do it based upon, fact-based decision making, not people-based decision making. And I think that is something that is a great entry into the use of AI when you're establishing your kind of proofs of concepts and your use cases. So really, when you're looking at this, when I have approached doing AI in the past, I think about it from the terms of what is a more conservative approach, what are ways that I can mitigate my risks, and then approach it from a standpoint of, I know that I want to see success. I know what my expected outcomes are. this is a great way for my people to be trained to understand what their responsibility to get the processes in place. So if I do then now introduce more conceptual outcomes by using generative, like the way a decision could go, or the likelihood of a set of attorneys bringing these questions based upon the data that's entered into the, the ruling or the data that's been presented, I have cleaner data and it's not driven by biases or predisposed information. And so I think that that's a really important, point you bring up. So one of the things I think is where we're seeing the most common use cases in that. And so we've been working with a lot of various customers out there on the different types of use cases for AI. And, we're seeing a lot of value in the data side of it, as well as the document side of it. So David, you kind of touched on it. Are you able to talk about the various use cases that we're seeing right now with the machine learning, or even with the generative AI?
You touched on something in your previous statement, which was right on, Heather, that gets me excited. And I'm a nerd, so I get excited about things that most people don't. I get excited about data. Okay. And one of the things I want to make sure our audience clearly understands the difference between bias and hallucinations. Generative AI that we know of today, and again, somebody else may know better than I, but I don't think so. It's right now, there doesn't seem to be a way to get rid of hallucinations. Now, hallucinations are completely made up facts. They're links that don't exist. They're court cases that, aren't real, but they look real, and the AI will tell you they're real. So that's a hallucination. That is something where Heather was saying that we always have to have a human in the process for anything that is coming out of a generative AI using language, etc. You really do, because we don't know how to get rid of them. AI hallucinates. Now, bias is different, right? Bias, it can be, even a bias can be subjective in some ways, right? Is it biased one way or the other, things like that. But bias is based on the data that the AI receives, right? So, and that's built into the information. It's not the AI, and I would say it this way: AI is not biased. The data we give the AI is biased. Okay, it's humans that have created this information that the AI is spitting back to us, that creates inequity, right? And we don't want inequity, especially in courts. We can't have it. But guess what? We already do have it, because humans are involved in courts. And the thing that gets me excited, that's why I get excited about the data side of this thing, is we already have bias in the court process. Okay, it just is what it is. Because anytime people are involved, there's going to be biases. Hopefully we understand our biases. With AI, we have the ability to measure and track the bias. Now, why is that important? It's because now we can adjust it. We can make it better. I can't do that with humans. I can't tell them, hey, you got to be a little bit better this way or that way, or whatever it is that I'm trying to correct. With AI, we can at least be transparent and say, hey, it's biased towards this or towards that, or whatever the information it gathered is biased towards, and you mentioned gender or something of that nature, right? And it's biased towards males or whatever it may be. But we can adjust the AI transparently so everybody knows, and that gets me excited, because it's not that there's not going to be biases. We're never going to eliminate biases as long as we have people. But the AI can help us adjust it and make it better. Now, in the use cases on the examples,
Volume, David. For some reason, we can't hear you. And it probably was quite inquisitive. I was making sure that nope, I cannot hear you. Nope, nobody can hear you. So I'm not sure what happened to your microphone.
okay, trying a different microphone.
There we go. Now we can hear you. Perfect. Sorry about that, people.
So as in the dispositions process, where the disposition between the original charge and then the actual charge that happens in conviction that comes through the courts, those two things get out of sync over time. And states have a challenge there where they're trying to reconcile, the rap sheet, if you will, for the person that was convicted with the actual conviction. And some states have very low matching rates, if you will, that could be like 10%, 20%. So really the rap sheet that you're looking at, the police are looking at, are inaccurate. Well, we have a machine learning process that MCP has developed that goes through and takes, the databases themselves, which you could do manually, but imagine millions of records over here and millions of records over here, and you're going to try and match them. Is it the same person? They've changed their name, they've changed their all this stuff. It just gets nightmarish with how many variables there are. Machine learning comes to the rescue. It is tremendous. Now, we still can't match everything because there's just bad data, right? There's just, somebody's name is completely different, or the social security number is off by a number, whatever it may be. But we can come up with a good probability that there are matches. And we've been successful taking the 15% court disposition matching up to, and again, I'll throw out numbers that I'm not sure of, but, it's something like 40 or 50%. I mean, it's huge. Millions of matches are being made because machine learning can do all this and come up with a very close match. So it's a great use of machine learning. If you've got a lot of data, a lot of information like that, machine learning probably has some good applications for you.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of success in this area. So when you cut out, let me just give you a quick overview. So for those of you who may not have heard initially, so what we've done with a lot of our states is we work with the Department of Public Safety and the local courts to be able to marry these and to be able to improve the criminal history records. And this is something that we've been working on for quite some time with several states. And the value of it is to be able to actually have a real holistic view of a criminal history record, from even the side of the prosecution to the data that comes from them, to law enforcement, to the courts, all the way up to the state level. And so, right now we have states that are physically going out and grabbing dispositions paper from their individual courts and then manually entering them to the system. We have found a mechanism is once we've got that data, that the AI does have the capability and a high percentile to be able to marry it together, having a person validate that it is accurate and then move it forward. And so that is a great example of them. I think another use case that you had mentioned is, looking at the quality of documents that have been lodged or data conversion. That's a big area. So a document, you may be doing bulk scanning efforts. We're all trying to be paper on demand or get rid of the paper files. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Or even have them as just, that's your backup emergency, and you have an electronic record because it's better for public access, better for judicial access. And so sometimes the scanning, and when it's done in bulk, goes awry. We've all seen it. So there may be illegible material on it. There may be missing pages. And so what we're doing right now is a program, and we've seen various AI providers out there that actually validates the quality of those documents that have been lodged. And so I think that is a great use case for ensuring that, especially if you're doing a data conversion effort or a document conversion effort, that what you're getting is the same. It's apples to apples. Microfiche is a perfect example for those of you going through a microfiche conversion, right? Making sure that what is on the microfiche is what gets into the system, things like that. So those are really common use cases we're starting to see in this space. And I think that it is one of those opportunities that, yes, it feels like it's one time, but the value of staff savings to do this work, because how many man hours, and I think, David, you did a calculation on man hours to be able to do, 1.5 million, pages is astronomical. It's, and we don't have the resources. We all know that it is a challenge for us to hire folks to do this type of work. And given the pay and, the opportunities and competition out there, I will say, if you are, we can have a whole discussion about hiring and, mechanisms for bringing new talent in. But when you are able to use this technology to not only level up your existing staff and any new staff, this becomes very interesting and enjoyable because it's very modern technology. It's modern practices. It's what the younger generations are used to in dealing with. So I think that there's a lot of wins in this space, in those areas. And, looking at from there, going to different kind of categories. So David, did you have other use cases that you wanted to call out, like specifically like in redaction or data quality for conversion?
Yeah, I wanted to mention one thing as well is again, the application of the technology depends on the use case, right? So whether using generative AI is valuable or machine learning is valuable depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But in this case, realizing that machine learning doesn't have hallucinations, it doesn't have bias, the things we were talking about as well. It is something where you can run the program 100 times and it'll give you the same answer. Whereas if you ran the same question to a generative AI of ChatGPT 100 times, you're going to get 100 variations of answers. They may be close, but it's something you do have to watch moving forward. But you also touched on one thing as well. When we start getting into documents, and that was part of our abstract for this particular webinar, I get excited again about the data, because here is data that has not been available to us as public safety, public courts, public sector. It's been locked away in our documents, and we probably have searches on a person's name or social security number, whatever it is, to find documents and what they are. But this right now with AI, it's opening up all the information that is in those documents like never before. Never been, I ended up many years ago, I did a case management system for attorneys, and we actually went through we actually were converting cases from, I'm in Nevada, so we were converting cases from, Elvis Presley and things like that. It was kind of fun, right? Like, oh, there's all these old, in our area, there's all these old celebrities way back when we were converting all these old cases. This is stuff that data is locked in from the 50s and 60s and 70s that nobody's really had access. The documents sitting there in a box somewhere, and then you digitize them. Now they're sitting in a digital box. But AI is unlocking the power. Now realize that in our world right now, the value of businesses, okay, not government, but even government's value is the data that you hold. The data and what you can do with that data is the value of why Microsoft's worth so much money, why Google's worth so much money, is the data they have. And in government too, our value to our customers, the public, is what we're able to do with that. We can do so much more now with generative AI and machine learning, et cetera. And in these cases, we can actually talk to our documents. Now, that is getting in a generative AI use case, but we can ask questions and we can get information back that we still have to sort, right? We still have to realize that you get it wrong, 5-10% of the time, whatever the number is, it's significant enough we have to do it. But we can ask questions of our document as one use case. Yes, you can automate redaction. And there are, again, the use cases where we can, do that on the fly, if you will. If I'm producing a FOIA request, it can be redacted. There's a lot of products out there that do that kind of stuff. That's not new or exciting to me. But if you want to do it at scale, boy, we have a solution for you, right? If you need to go back and say, hey, I want to produce 100 million documents, well, AI can go and redact the personal information off those so that they can be available for whatever reason. AI can help with that. It can do it very well, and can give you lots of solutions. Other areas in the courts, you might be better at that than I am, Heather, in terms of how it can be used. But I'm just excited about the data that it unlocks. And what can you do with that? Well, a lot.
Well, I will say one of the things that I think probably is the number one issue, and I've said this on many of the talks that I've done, is the data, the quality of the data. And so as you are embarking on your kind of path through AI, whether you're using generative, whether you're using machine learning, it depends on your use case, as David mentioned. But I think that the biggest issue is the quality of our data. And without going through and validating the quality of the data to ensure that it is not going to be erroneously used or used for, bad actors or just misuse in general. I think that you always have to validate your data. And I think that what is great about what we've talked about is that AI and has the ability now to validate and do quality control on your data and your documents. And to me, that is probably your first step. That has been the struggle of why many governments have not gone forward, because the data just doesn't tell an accurate story, or it doesn't tell a story that's reflective of the version of your organization. And as we know, data can tell any story. And so if you are not preparing yourself and understanding the stories that your data can tell, you will not be in control of the outcomes and how it may be used as a public, by the public. Because all of our data, especially in the courts, is public information, right? Unless explicitly stated that it is not public information. So a court case, court information, it's available for public consumption. So ensuring that the material that you have is factually accurate is absolutely important, and is important for the credibility of the judicial branch. And so I think that is the key and first steps as we talk about implementing these types of use cases, is really that validation component. And that's where we are really seeing a huge push right now across the courts of ensuring that what you're using is accurate. And more importantly, as I had mentioned earlier, removing the biases, removing any potential likelihood for misinterpretation or misuse. There's always bad actors out there. I mean, let's be real. That's the nature of the industry. That's the nature of technology and kind of the world today. But the more we can ensure that we are providing transparent, accurate information, and we can use AI for that, because again, we don't have the resources to do it manually. I think it's a great opportunity. Other types of things that we might be looking at for AI. So I like the idea of recognizing data, different records, and combining them together to create a full view. The other area that I think that is really going to be, we're seeing a lot of push in, and we've done a lot of help with, is document creation and automated workflows. Automated workflow engines are something that is a really critical area. It is something that, again, in courts, we are a paper-based world. That has been our document-based world. We're not a data-driven world. We're slowly transitioning to a data-driven world, but we are document-driven, which means the data that's in there is our bread and butter. It's our livelihood. And so again, finding ways to have AI automate that process and help us make it more refined will also reduce errors, because as humans, we're humans. We make errors. And so having a machine go through the process and help going and doing that work for standard, repeatable, always the same business process, data entry, but a human validating it, always a human in the loop, is another great use case for using AI. And again, that's machine learning. That is a way to do it. So if you are new to the world of AI, start with something that you can consume. It's like that, the adage of eating the elephant one bite at a time, right? Start small, understand it, get comfort, train your staff, and be aware. Bring somebody in, whether it's an MCP or some other company, to ensure that you are following good practices, good procedures in this process, just to make sure that you are always able to justify and answer to your output and your results. Because again, good government is transparent government. And so I think that that's one of the key elements that we have. So before we get into the Q&A, David, did you want to wrap up with some comments?
Yeah, one of the things that, well said, Heather, when you started off with data and, making data quality, that is the foundation of everything, right? But, and the other thing I would really, really encourage you is you're going to hear a lot of headlines, and the headlines typically are going to be negative, right? That's what sells clicks, right, online. And understanding that there is things that are being misused, and a lot of times it's not bad actors, it's just unintentional bad use, right? It's just stupid people, a lawyer that did put something out there that they shouldn't have done, right? So, but don't, there is so much good as well. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you will. Don't worry. Don't come at this with a fear. Come at this with a sense of adventure. There is a lot that can be done, and a lot of ways we can transform our entire industry. The other thing I wanted to mention too is just a little bit of a plug about MCP and the way we work, because I'm proud of it. I'm not even trying to sell you our services. I'm just saying we are truly technology agnostic. We do come up with technical solutions for our clients because we have a technology department, but that's our intention, is just to meet whatever your mission, whatever your goal is as an agency, and we will help you figure it out. One of the things we mentioned, obviously, a lot is about documents. If you need a document management system, I'm not going to sell you a document management system, but I will help you find one. I know all of them. I've worked with many of them, most of the larger players. MCP can be that company that can help you fairly look at the landscape that's out there with all of the products. I know we have some vendors even on this particular webinar. We'll work with you as vendors too to really fairly represent your product amongst all the others to our clients, because we're really about our clients, and I'm proud of that. That yes, we will offer you we have a document disposition product, if you will. We have a document validation product and an AI version of that, but I'm most proud that we are here to meet whatever the agency's needs are, and we have the expertise in courts, we have the expertise in technology and AI to help you do that. So that's where I'm at, Heather.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and just to piggyback on, I think one of the things that is the value, and those of you who are on the phone who know me, it is about making sure that you're going to be successful. That is the mission of us. We are not people who come in to stay in there and live in your organization forever. That's not how we are. We want to level you up. We want to see your success, and we want you to evolve. And that is important. And that is important for the judiciary. It is important for the people. And I think that is the mission at hand. And so we want to open it up to questions. So I don't see any in the chat right now. Do we have any questions about the different types of technologies or anything that's related to AI and in the court space? Maybe
we should play those K-pop songs while we're waiting.
I know the $50 million K-pop deal. My son, who's a musician, is probably not going to be happy to read about that. All right, so Judge Croce, nice to see you or hear from you. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, hopefully. Have you done or seen a successful AI tools that assist courts in checking completeness of civil or family default judgment packets? Your thoughts on this use case? We have not explicitly on that particular use case. However, I think that the technology that we're playing with right now and we're using for other examples of quality and validation, I think is something that we would just need to work with you on what that looks like in terms of how to program it and what we would tell the AI engine to validate against. But David, you want to touch on that?
You might have to help me with the language there a little bit. Family default judgment packet. I don't know what that is.
So it is basically, so in a family law or a civil judgment, if there is there's not a responsiveness, there's a packet that gets delivered. It's a default, end result of it, right? And so you're wanting to validate, is it an accurate material all presented to be able to get the default judgment?
Right. Okay. It sounds like, again, not knowing the details, sounds like a great use for machine learning, to tell you the truth, especially if there's volumes of these things, if there's, more than you can physically get through as a person.
Yeah, I think it's a great use case. And again, we run a lot of, proofs of concepts just because we want to learn and it's interesting. So, that's something that we're working on several use cases right now with, creating with our existing clients, with creating actual document packages. That was one that we're doing. We also are looking at the quality of data currently residing in a solution and what it needs to be successfully converted into a modern system. And so then we're looking at where there may be pages missing, where their documents may be missing. So I think that these are all really valuable use cases for doing that work. There are, like I said, there are companies out there that do something similar, but using your data and then validating it against what is required and the basic requirements of the law and what you require for your local rules, I think is a great opportunity to see what's being submitted and what is required, and then putting the delta together and putting this is erroneous, it needs to be kicked back. And to me, that's almost like an e-filing kind of, automated validation tool as well. And that's something that we've also talked about. The workflow, any of our workflow that we have in the courts needs validation, which is why we have humans doing it, which has been a struggle across the board for many years. I think we all know we don't have enough resources to be able to do these things. This is why we get backlogged. It's why we're not able to keep up. It is a challenge. And there's a lot of information out there that needs to be validated, especially for the quality level that we in the judiciary like to have, right? We want A+ quality all the time. And that is the essence of the judicial branch, which is one of the reasons why I love it. And so the idea of taking a program that we set the standards for and have it validate the level of quality of what we're receiving, and then we have human eyes to validate it, of course, as we do the proof of concept, and always circling back in the loop, I think is a great value add to any organization, because what it does is it frees up staff time to focus on other things that we desperately need to get done in the courts. So I think that's a great use case. All right, any other questions that we may have?
Yeah, I think that for courts, for me, as you're thinking of your questions, this is one of the best places for AI. I would say legal, medical, maybe government, where there's just a lot depth of information that's not being used, is one of the best places for AI to be applied. Now, how it would be applied is by you asking questions like Michael did, is, how can those things happen? And what we're finding with a lot of our clients is sometimes we're not quite sure what questions to ask because it's changing so fast. And that's another area where we can be helpful to you, is that we have an advisory service, if you will, we can be somebody sitting there with you in your meetings, your brainstorming meetings, your procurement meetings, your roadmap meetings, things like that, to make sure you have the information, the structures that you need to answer questions or to know what questions to ask. Will a recording of the seminar be available? I believe so. I think.
Yeah,
Jason
I believe so. I think it will be. It'll be on our website. And of course, anybody who has a question, so we will be at the Court Technology Conference. I will be there next week. David won't be there, but we can schedule some time. You're more than welcome to come chat with myself or Brad Smith, or we actually have one of our data integration and who does the AI piece for the larger statewide integration law enforcement disposition program, our Vice President Jim Pingle. He's our digital solutions VP, and he will also be there talking about using AI to cleanse data and be able to create your data repository, empowering for Power BI or whatever, tool you choose for your data repository and planning. Again, all going back to the data. And, I really encourage you. AI is fun. We all are using ChatGPT, Claude, whichever your chosen desktop assistant is. I think that that's a great model for just general help. But for us as organizations, as public servants, ensuring that our data is accurate, using AI to get us up to snuff where we can really start using it in meaningful ways, I think is a great opportunity for us as a government. And I think that it takes the fear out of a lot of the conversations around the use of AI. Yep. And that's just kind of my final plug. Are there any other questions? It does not look like there is. Well, we do thank you so much for taking your afternoon to visit with us and hang with us. If you have suggestions for other topics, please send me a note or send David a note or any of our team. And we would love to, open up the board and have more discussions on different, challenges that are happening. We did one at NACM on the court modernization. We had a panel of wonderful speakers. We would love to continue to grow this community, because I think that the better we are together is the stronger we are and the more successful we'll be as a branch of government. So thank you all. David, any finishing words?
No, I mean, this is exciting because we can improve outcomes for the public, ultimately, make ourselves more efficient as well. But I get excited about anything that is public facing that can make things better for people. I think that's why a lot of us are in this industry. Let's help make a better nation, and happy to help you guys with whatever you need. So very, very good job, Heather. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful, hopefully I'll see you all next week at Core Technology Conference.
Bye-bye.